For that, let's get to our panel now. And joining me from Adelaide, we have Labor MP Nick Champion, and in Melbourne, Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer. Good morning to you both. Nick, substantial progress in the carbon tax talks in the Multi-Party Committee. This must be a relief for Labor MPs because the vacuum of information, the limbo, has been damaging for the government.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think what's the most important thing is this is a big national interest reform. It's important for the future of the country, and it's important that we talk to all the parties on the Multi-Party Climate Committee. The Liberal Party were invited to be on that committee originally and declined the invite. It's important that we talk that great reform through. It's a big reform.
You're not sure about the vacuum being damaging. Surely a lack of information, the detail, you must concede, has hurt the government to this point.
Well, look, I think in the longer term it's more important that we get the details right, and it's more important that all the parties discuss the matter fully. It's important that negotiations go on about this, so that when something is announced, that it's well thought through and it's the right reform for Australia. We think that pricing carbon efficiently through a market is the way forward. The Liberal Party think that subsidy and ultimately more regulation is the way forward. There are obviously pretty big differences. We're, as a backbencher, obviously, you have constituents who want more information, but I think they also want us to take our time to get the details right and to come up with a package that passes the Parliament.
Do you think that this will be a bit of a circuit breaker for the government? Are you hoping that this might engage people again, because at the moment they appear to have turned off what Prime Minister Gillard is saying on this and other issues?
Well, look, I think people are always interested in the big issues that affect our country, and there's no bigger issue than climate change. It is, a very big international issue. It's something that, is topical and controversial, and it's something that people hold, pretty extreme views on one way or the other. Most of my constituents, I think, want us to get it right. They want us to address the issue, and they want us to do it in an economically and environmentally responsible way, and I'm sure that that's what the government is doing. So I've been prepared to take whatever heat there's been in the community in order to, get this long-term reform right.
Okay, Kelly, as this deal looms and nears, it's becoming very clear, and we heard this from the Greens yesterday, that even if the coalition win the next election, that Mr Abbott won't be able to rescind the tax because in the upper house he won't have the control of the Senate. So it seems that the coalition, even if you win the next election, you'd either have to keep the tax or go to a double dissolution election.
Well, Kieran, I think the critical point here first is that while we hear that this deal is almost done between the Labor Party and the Greens, the Australian people have been locked out of this deal. We are still none the wiser knowing the detail behind it. And I think this is one of the critical issues facing the government right now. They're not releasing any modelling, they're not releasing any assumptions. They haven't come clean with the Australian people to tell them how much more their groceries are going to cost, how much more their electricity is going to cost, how much more their living costs are going to go up. And we already know that people are doing it tough. So, while we hear that they're close to a deal, it's a deal that's been done in secret. It's a deal that's been done without consultation with the Australian community. This is a government, let's not forget, that went to the last election that said that there will be no carbon tax under the government that Julia Gillard led, and they're bringing in, with a secret deal with Bob Brown and a number of others, they're bringing in this carbon tax without talking to the Australian people about it. The Australian people have a right to know how much it's going to impact them.
But Kelly,
the Australian people have a right to have a vote on this issue.
It looks like it will be a reality, though, and so beyond this, if, as we're expecting it to be, this deal to be announced and the legislation to go through later in the year, to rescind it, the coalition would need the support of both houses of Parliament, and the Greens, well, the coalition to take the balance of power in the Senate would need to win 23 of 36 seats in the Senate at the next election. That's not viable. So to rescind it, you'd have to go to a double dissolution, or to get control of both houses, or just cop the tax.
Well, we think, of course, that the Labor Party should listen to the Australian people right now. There is a chorus of people who are now calling for there to be an election. Gerry Harvey was the latest voice to be added to that chorus, and they're saying that we should, before anything is actually determined now, we should go to an election. If this government truly believes that this is what the Australian people want, they should be prepared to face up, to front up to the Australian people, to argue their case, and before they bring in any legislation in cahoots with the Greens, who now have their hands all over the economic levers of our country, before they're prepared to cause untold damage to our economy, they need to front up to the Australian people and make the case. Now, if they do bring it in without going to an election, and we then go to the next election and we win that next election, we think it is incumbent upon not only the Greens but also the Labor Party to listen to the will of the people. This is unfortunately not what's happening right now.
Okay, let's go to Nick. I want to ask you about some of the detail that's emerged. That apparently the Multi-Party Committee has committed to a definite switch or transition from a tax to an emissions trading scheme in 2015. Would the hope be to take the heat off the Prime Minister over her broken promise on the carbon tax by giving a timeline and saying, look, this is only temporary and we will get to the emissions trading scheme and here's the date?
Well, look, I dispute the sort of basis of your question, Kieran. Look, in effect, there was no broken promise.
The broken promise element? She said there'd be no carbon tax, and now there is.
Well, just let me explain. Look, what we're talking about is an emissions trading scheme with a fixed price for the first 5 years and then a floating price thereafter. That was basically the framework of what's been sort of promoted. And the important thing is people said, well, the fixed price is akin to a tax. And, you know, the Prime Minister, I think, said, well, look, that's probably
right.
Akin
to a tax.
Well, look, let's be clear about this. Pricing carbon and emissions trading has been to the 2007 election, where both parties signed up to it, and to the 2010 election. And an emissions trading scheme and pricing carbon, even if it is with a fixed price, has been to the Australian people twice now in elections.
So what do you make of Julia Gillard's
Kelly, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Kelly, in a moment. Let's just
take a deep breath. Let me make the point. So the point about it is that people want something done on climate change. There is, I suppose, this great contest at the moment between whether we're going to price carbon efficiently through a market or whether we're going to go down the Liberal road of massive public subsidies to polluters and ultimately more regulation on industry. And what we think, what the Labor Party thinks, is that the market-based mechanism of pricing carbon is the best way forward. That's what the National Australia Bank thinks. It's what the Westpac Bank thinks. It's what most economists think. And the Liberal Party really want to take us down a road which will cost us a lot more money and will tie industry up in a lot more regulation in the long term. So this is the test. I mean, people can talk about broken promises and all the rest of it, but that's just politics and at the end of the day. Really what we're talking about is what is the best policy way forward.
Before we go to a break, I do want to get Kelly's response to that. And Kelly, the point that I would put to you as well, that Nick did mention in passing there, is that the Coalition has in the past taken this very policy and emissions trading scheme to the people as your policy. That was under Mr Howard in 2007.
Well, the first thing, though, of course, Kieran, that Nick said was that their promises aren't worth anything. You know, they can say one thing and they'll do something completely differently, so let's not forget that. Look, you know, our policy is very clear. We have a direct action plan. We believe that we can achieve exactly the same in terms of emissions reduction at a much lesser cost to the Australian people. We believe that we can do it without damaging the economy. This is something that we have actually taken to an election. This is something that people have in fact had a vote on, and we think that the Labor Party should do likewise. They should take their scheme to the election and argue the case.
All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.